Welcome to The Blind. It is season 2, and we are here with another episode. We have got my man Dustin Roddy here with us from Cache River Farms. Before we get into talking with our buddy Dustin, Cam, why don't you go ahead and roll that intro? Let's show our sponsor some love, and let's start this episode of The Blind. Well, welcome to The Blind. It is season 2, and just like we had promised, we're going to get you some new people on here to make sure that we cover all things in the duck hunting world. And we've got my man Dustin Roddy here with us from Cache River Farms. Dustin, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Good. How are you, sir?
Well, we're doing okay. Garrett and I have had supper. Garrett looks good and full over there, as usual.
As
And
always.
and man, we're ready. We're ready to rock and roll. Before we jump into this, let's say a big thanks to all of our sponsors here for making season 2 happen. Man, we've got some really good sponsors, and we call them sponsors because that's what they are. They're really partners with us here on the show, and they've turned into some really good friends for us. And of course, as you can see on the bottom of your screen, each and every week, these guys and girls help us put this show on all the time. So Shin Gear, making some of the best waterfowl, essential tools that you have out there. Lyle Real Estate, we come to you each and every week from our Lyle Real Estate studio. Apex Ammunition, Dustin, I don't know if you shoot Apex or not, but Garrett and I do, and man, they make some really good stuff. Alpha Innovations, the Do-It-All Rack System, Stratton Seed Company, Perfect Limit Outdoors, Dirty Duck Coffee, and used to be High and Dry, but now they are Hella Dry utility poles. And if you don't have one of those, you need to get on their page and get you one of those, because Garrett and I really, really like having those in the boat or in the timber or wherever we're gonna hunt at. Take them in the boat with us out there and stick them in the ground when we get out, and those things are really good. So, but we appreciate all of those partners for helping us put on this show each and every week. And enough of that. Let's talk with our very special guest tonight, Dustin. So, Dustin, where are you coming to us from tonight?
Searcy, Arkansas.
Searcy, Arkansas, the big town up there with the
Yes,
Harding
sir.
Bison.
Harding Bisons. That's right. That's right.
That's right. So, Dustin, for everybody that doesn't know you very well, just kind of start off and tell everybody who you are, kind of where you're from. I don't know if you're originally from Searcy or not, but just tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of just jump into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So Dustin Roddy, from Searcy, Arkansas, born and raised. Graduated high school here in 2001. I think it was a long time ago now. Um, Grew up duck hunting just east of here, and Jackson, Woodruff, Monroe, those counties down along the Cache River system, and still reside here today with my wife and so
Awesome.
yeah.
And so
Searcy was fun.
you went to high school there. Now, isn't the high school there Harding too?
Harding Academy is the private school here.
Oh, okay, okay. I knew
Searcy,
there was a
I
high
actually
school
went
up
to
there.
Searcy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually went to Searcy. Searcy
Okay.
High.
Okay.
So,
Awesome. Awesome. Well, man, your place, I mean, it's a hell of a place from what I've seen. I haven't got the opportunity to hunt there. We're hoping that, maybe we get an invite to come and hunt. But man, I've been following you, been friends with you on social media for a couple years now, and seen all the stuff that you're doing, and got the opportunity to know you over the last few months or a year or so. And man, you do some really cool stuff at Cache River Farm. So why don't we just jump right into that, and you kind of tell us how you started. Take us all the way back to the beginning of how you even started on this adventure.
in April of 2016, I got my real estate license. And originally, Brian, I was planning on just going in and being, a typical real estate agent, just transactionally. So go out, solicit a listing, put it on a website, connect buyer and seller. And just kind of figured out that my passion was more geared toward the development side. And it didn't really take me, I hope, very long to fall in love with that side of the farm world. So shifted a little bit, but that's kind of where it all started. It was back in 2016. 2016. So we bought our first farm in August of 2016, and just over time have looked to pick up some additional properties and try to build a good little batch of farms that we can improve and go from good waterfowl habitat on them. Now we've kind of gone a lot more into the, I say a lot more, but we've recently we're we do work with buyers and connect some of those guys, but it's a very small focus of what we're doing every day. Every day right now we're going out and looking either on one of our farms and helping improve habitat, or go to another private landowner and help those folks out as well. So that's
But
kind of the
Dustin,
long and short clip note.
Yeah.
yeah. So I was reading a little article. I think that you had written or spoke to someone about, and it said that maybe you did this at the beginning. I don't know if this is still your goal, but there's a lot of guys out there that don't have $5 million to go spend on a place, a turnkey property, and from what I saw, it said that your focus, maybe initially, maybe that's still the way it is now, was that you focused on smaller properties, 50 to 150 acres. Um, and I mean, me and Brian, that's probably still not doable, but that feels more doable for guys like us that we could possibly at some point start small and get a small little farm and develop it or turn it into something and hopefully grow it over time. Is that kind of how that you went about growing what you have now?
Yep, 100%. Yep. And as a, kind of to me, there's two rules of thought. You can either go in and try to take, put together a large contiguous tract, and if you can't do that, then start small. But the same concept and the same management practices apply whether you've got, you know, 5,000 contiguous acres or a 50-acre parcel. You've got to provide food, you've got to provide water, and you've got to provide rest time. Can't beat them over the head every single day and expect what, like I said, whether you have a small parcel or a super large, tract, you have to play. So those three things don't change regardless of acreage. So yeah.
So since you since you've worked with some smaller farms or pieces of land, and I know you've got some bigger ones as well. For somebody like Garrett and I, let's say we wanted to purchase something. What is the smallest piece of property that you've worked with that has been successful? Because when we look around, and I know there's not a one size fits all when it comes to this generic answer that I'm kind of asking for, but what is the smallest piece of acreage that you have at least worked with and made it work? Where there's been ducks killed on it, it's been successful.
So I think the way that you frame success is, it's relative, right? If I have the 5,000 acre farm versus the 15 acre, 20 acre, or 40 acre tract or whatever, you know, 5,000 acre farm, if you're just relating it in terms of days of, hunted, it can withstand a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, um, it, you have to define what success is on my tracks. But the smallest track that we worked with, 15 and a half acres.
Really.
And yeah, now it's not a 60-day a year. You're not going to go to it every single day and it be
Yeah, for
successful.
sure.
And this one kind of set up a little bit different because a portion of the 15 fell within what I would consider a traffic location, being,
Hmm.
a river channel, something that's naturally flooded, and then a portion of it spilled out into the field behind it, that you were able to, and it was super small. It was like 4 acres of field. So you can still go in there, you can plant, you can manage, you can manipulate water, and because of where it's set, it had success. But that's probably, I don't know, but those little small tracks that are that minute are few and far between. If it were me, I'm gonna start out with, the minimum I'm looking for is probably 40 acres is typically what I would say the minimum is on
Yeah.
being able to go in and actually do something that you can sustain ducks on.
So how much how many acres have you acquired now? Like what you're with Cash River Farms? What is your operation right now?
We have, and I'd have to sit down and count that up. It's
Just a
we're
roundabout number.
yeah, almost 1,000. It was somewhere between 800 and 1,000 acres. I was just over 1,100. We sold a couple pieces off earlier this year, give or take, call it 800 acres or so. The But Brian, you said something earlier. You were asking about small farms, and then you said, I know you have bigger places. The smallest tract is 40 acres. The largest tract is 163 point something.
And
So
now all
we
of these
don't.
tracks are not together.
No, they're not.
They're
None of
here,
us are
there, and
individual.
everywhere.
It's just a hodgepodge of farms. Yep, of smaller acreage tracts. That's right.
So are you in the market to sell some of your smaller ones at this point? Or are you kind of hanging on to what you got, kind of not? You're focusing on improving those right now, not really selling them.
Yeah, Brian, it's one of those deals to where I, we're not in the market to sell, and everything that we buy is bought with a focus of buy, long-term hold, develop, make it the best as it can be, and then just sit with it. Now, do we move some tracks at times? Yeah, if it makes sense, sure. But we're not, it's not really like a flip this house mentality, right? Go in and buy, develop, and then 12 to 24 months later, you're trying to resell it. That's not um, the model that we're operating on. But if
So
that answers
Dustin,
your question.
whenever you're looking for a piece of property, okay, and it's not a developed piece of duck hunting property, okay, maybe it's never been hunted before, or maybe just a little bit, but it's not set up. Do you have a set of rules or a set of criteria or things that you're like, this place has got to have at least these things in order for me to even be interested?
So it's got to have neighborhood location, number one,
Number
right?
one.
And we had number one, whether you're talking commercial real estate or duck hole,
And when you
location is
say
number one.
when you say location, you're talking we're close to a river system. Are we close to other duck clubs?
It's area specific, right? I mean, there's places that are. I mean, either way, it's drilling down into the nuts and bolts and really understanding. If you look at the state of Arkansas, in my opinion, and you cut the state of Arkansas into thirds: western third, central third, eastern third. The majority of the eastern third, let's just call it, is where you're going to find, you know, your duck habitat.
Right.
So within that eastern third, I mean, not every single duck farm is anchored up next to a river or a bayou or whatever. Some of them sit off X amount of miles, however many that may be. Doesn't mean they're any more or less productive at times than something that's sitting bellied up next to a river channel. So man, I think you have to look at each individual piece and understand what's going on the properties around you. And so that would be my answer to that. I don't have to be anchored right next to a defined drainage.
Right. So location is number one. What would be your next? What's your next
It's,
piece of
and
criteria?
we're talking about a completely undeveloped farm. So in my mind, it's raw. There's no levee systems. There's no infrastructure. There's no irrigation wells. There's no anything. So I'm looking at location. I'm looking at soil type. I want to make sure that if I go in and put a levee system in place, that the soil type is conducive to hold water. Um, and then the third thing is just access to water. What does that look like? Can I relift? Can I drill a well? All that kind of good stuff. But as long as I've got the right location, the right soil type, and access to water, then
Anything else is just a bonus.
everything else, yes, yep, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Well, look, before we dive into some more stuff, let's take a little short break real quick, and show some love to our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk. Let's talk a little about some food source. Let's talk a little more get a little more in depth about water management type stuff, and then of course, before we get you off here tonight, we're going to talk about some duck hunting. So let's take a short break. We'll be right back with more from Dustin Roddy of Cache River Farms. Well, welcome back here on The Blind. We have got Dustin Roddy with us from Cache River Farms, all the way from the big town of Searcy, Arkansas. Dustin, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a very busy man. You got a lot of stuff going on and a family as well, so we appreciate you for taking the time to chat with us.
Enjoying it, boys. Let's
So
keep
let's
rolling. What you got?
let's dive a little bit more into this land management and development stuff. So
Yeah.
let's just say the most perfect piece of property you can find. What is Dustin's favorite food source for ducks? I mean, are you a flooded timber, let them eat the acorns type guy, rice, beans, corn? Of course, you could always take bags of corn and throw it out there. They like that stuff real well. But what's your favorite food source on that you've had the most success with on your properties?
Um, it's, I mean, something planted or moist soil. So in my ideal one, now we're just talking about a food source. So
Yeah.
and each farm functions a little bit different. So on some farms, we're planting food sources strategically for vertical height, i.e. corn, milo, for cover as well as a food source, right? And then
Hmm.
trying to, in my ideal world, that stuff grows up dirty with grass and barnyard, sprinkle top, whatever, some of your native grasses in there to provide a little bit more food as well. But what I found is that those ducks will utilize that cover almost as much as they do the food at times. Um, but on other farms, cover isn't as necessary because maybe the farm is super protected. There's no, you know, county roads running down one side or the other of it. I mean, it's just you really have to work to even get into the interior farm. I mean, and there's a lot of pounds per acre of food produced if you plant right. And you look at like duck use days. I'm sure you guys have looked at those charts from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Handbook on wetland management. But they go in and they talk about how many days an acre of a certain food source can sustain how many ducks per day.
Hmm.
Nothing trumps rice. I mean, it's got a lot of a lot of value to it. But with that being said, Brian, you also have to think through what does a duck need? Well, it doesn't need rice, it doesn't need corn, it doesn't need milo every day. A lot of times, more soil makes up a big percentage of a duck's dietary needs throughout the season. And so, in my ideal world, I'm able to give them a little buffet of multiple food sources.
Yeah. Oh, well, and that was going to be my next question. What all do you plant? What all do
You
you give them?
know, this year, in years past, so just going back to say first food plot. I mean, we've done everything from rice and corn and milo to jack and millet and chawapa millet and some of those things. So this year we focused a lot more. Most of the stuff that we planted this year had vertical height to it. So we did a lot of milo this year. Milo seems to be a really easy. Corn's a little bit tougher of a crop to grow because it doesn't like wet feet, and typically where we're putting those plants are in lower, more depressed areas, right? And so, not saying that milo can withstand a flood if it catches a flood, but it's not as finicky as corn, or from what I found anyhow.
Hmm.
Um, so we rolled a lot of milo this year across the farm.
And so
So
is
does
all
go ahead.
is all of the land that you have that's a part of your operation, is it all in eastern Arkansas or kind of where?
Yeah, it's everything is the corridor is let's say southern Woodruff to northern mid northern Jackson over right, knocking on the door of Crossing Poinsett County. So that's kind of the little box that we're operating in. We're spread out over roughly, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, 40 miles, something like
Yeah,
that. It's kind
I
of
got
the,
you.
the box that we're in.
While we're talking about food and food sources, something else that gets talked about a lot nowadays is the impact of farming practices and the change in farming practices and how that's affected ducks. As in, like the old
Possibly.
combines may have left way more rice in the field or way more corn or all this stuff, and they've gotten the technology and the things have gotten so much better, which kudos to the farmer. I mean, he's making his money and he needs every bit of it out of that field he can get. Um, do you in your farms do you selectively leave crops, or what's kind of your way of combating?
Well, he's farming for ducks, so hell yeah, he leaves
So,
some
yeah,
corn on the
I
ground.
mean, very little of what we're doing is very little of the acres that we have is in commercial ag production. Now we do have
Okay,
a few acres that are, but those acres are typically, something that's going to stay high and dry. It's not going to be susceptible to river flood, anything like that, or natural flooding. And it, again, it makes up a very small percentage of the overall acreage, but we always just rent that out to a tenant farmer and let those guys do what they put in. Now, if it's something that we're going to, that's impounded that we can put water on, then we're not running a combine through, through any of those acres.
right.
And typically, Garrett, what we're focused on is, ground that isn't, I mean, we're not looking for A-plus crop ground. We're looking for the stuff that farmers are kind of shying away from because it tends to get wet, stay wet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, what you're saying is your operation. You run your machinery, but instead of putting it into a grain hauler, you just shoot it out on the ground. Is that right?
Well, we just, a combine doesn't set foot on the farm. So we'll leave
I'm
it
just
standing
messing with you.
vertically and let her bump. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's cool. I mean, it's and it's there's this battle that's been going on. I guess maybe since the beginning of time, but of course, social media has made it even more, put it in the limelight a little more. But there's always this battle against or between public land hunters and private land hunters. It's kind of like that. You got a desk job or you work out in the heat. It's kind of one of those two things where somebody's always trying to one up the next person. So, and private land hunters, you know, they get a bad rep for hunting private land. Because it's just quote unquote so easy. And all this. You may not have to walk and race to holes and stuff like that. But let's talk about the private land hunting just a little bit. I mean, the private land hunting gives tons of resources for our ducks that not only you are killing, but they're going to the public places to get shot as well. I mean, the food sources that you're doing, you are planning and feeding for the ducks.
Correct. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Brian. I mean, if you look at let's go back to that, third in the state of Arkansas, up west, central, east side has the majority of the duck habitat. Um, 10% of that is public, 90% of that is privately held. So
Yeah.
let's think about this for a second. Let's say that you eliminated anybody doing anything beneficial for waterfowl across the 90% of the duck habitat that's available in the state, and that's you need the private guys. I mean, the whole state needs. We really need private and public to work together and link arm in arm and say, hey, let's do what's best for the eastern third of the state to keep as many ducks coming into this geographical, box as possible. And then I believe everyone's going to win. That's the same reason why I love the development stuff. It's like I don't have to own it. If I can help improve it, guess what that does? That helps me. That helps you. It helps the private or the public guy, a couple miles away. It just, man, let's work collectively as a group and roll. That's kind of the way that I think it's up to us to change the thought process, right? So, and get away from this private public mentality. It's not a versus. It should be a team deal. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, people can't help but compare
I
and
know.
and and, and argue and fight. It's kind of like if you wear, banded waders or you wear Sitka waders or shin waders. If you hunt with expensive equipment, then you're not as good of a hunter. I mean, how dare you spend money on good stuff? Because it just doesn't make you a good duck hunter. I mean,
Yeah,
look,
yeah. I
our
will say this,
wives
right?
spend money on all kinds of stuff. I like to spend some money on some stuff too, and it's just hunting stuff. So I mean, You know?
I think if you're being honest, though, all the guys would rather own their own place and wear shin waders all the time, right? I mean, it's the same thing like you were saying. If you work out in the heat, all those guys that are out there busting their butt in the heat would rather be sitting in the cool AC.
And a lot, but here's the kicker. A lot of some of those guys sitting in the cool AC look outside their office window and think, "Man, if I could get outside and do
That's
something, yeah,
me. That's me in the
yeah,
wintertime. I wish I could get outside.
Just in the wintertime, though.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Everything has its pros and cons.
Yeah,
that's true.
Everything.
I worked in the oil field when I was in college, and at one time for a very, very short period of time, I debated on dropping out of college because I just, I mean, it was just a grind. I was ready to make some money. I thought I'd get out of college, get a job, and have some money, and then you get a job and you got a bunch of bills, so you really never have any money. But I worked in the oil field in college, and that's the reason why I finished getting my degree, was because I knew that and honestly, I really, really enjoyed it. I just didn't want to do it the rest of my life. And so I enjoy soaking up that AC every day. I'll jack it down as low as it'll go, and I'll happily pay that bill.
When I'm operating through a swamp and on August 15th and it's 143 degrees and you need both hands, one to fight off mosquitoes and one to fight off deer flies and horse flies. I mean, yes, I trust me, I've thought the same thing, but it comes in small spurts and then the season changes and that first cold north wind hits you in the face.
That's right.
You go
Well,
ahead
look,
and be outside.
we got lots more to talk about, and we're going to take another short break real quick. We got to squeeze a couple of these in here tonight, Dustin, and so let's take one more short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some water management, and then we're going to dive head first off into some duck hunting. So we'll be right back with more from Dustin Roddy of Cache River Farms. Well, welcome back here, season 2 of The Blind. And guys, I've got to admit that I have an addiction. And of course, one of my addictions is duck hunting, but I can't seem to stay off of my cell phone checking deer camera pictures now that, the technology has gotten to where you can have cell cams. So I'm sitting here watching all these hogs eating up all my corn so that the deer can't eat it. So, but speaking of cell cams, I just learned this recently, and I've known these guys for a few years, but if you are in the market for some cell cams or anything Tacticam, our buddies over at Stratton Seed Company are actually a Tacticam dealer, and you can get your deer cameras. I actually just got in today from them the new Tacticam 6.0 barrel cam, so I'm going to try one of those out. I may wish that I didn't get one after I see how badly I shoot, but I got one of those in today. So if you're in the market for any Tacticam gear, give our guys over at Stratton Seed Company a shout. So
I'm just glad we'll have proof now that I'm the one that killed the duck.
we may have proof, but I don't think it's going to be proof of that. But well, look, we got Dustin Roddy with us from Cache River Farms, and Dustin, we appreciate you getting on here and talking all things about some land management and maintenance and just a little bit of everything. And we're going to get into some duck hunting here in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about water management. We kind of hit on it a few minutes ago, but 99% of the guys that listen or watch our show are going to just be normal guys like Garrett and I that don't do what you do on a daily basis. So tell us a little bit about water management. Like, I mean, when do you put water on a field? I mean, do you guys have timber as well, or is it just fields?
No, we have portions of woods and also fields.
So let's talk about both of that, timber and fields, because I'm assuming they're way different from what I know of it. But I don't know the details because I don't go out and turn a pump on and flood stuff up. So let's talk about that. When do you put water on? How much water do you put on it?
You know, Brian, that's kind of one of those things, in my opinion, where every farm has its own. Every farm's a little bit different. Now, in general, like general rules, I mean, obviously, when it comes to any farm, I don't care if you have 1 acre of hardwoods or a million acres of hardwoods. Timing on hardwood, water on, water off, is super critical. And we I think everybody's Game and Fish has made a big push, and they're doing a lot of restoration work inside those WMAs right now to try to reverse some of the things. Long story short, getting it on late and pulling it off, making sure that it's pulled off timely is the name of the game when it comes to hardwoods. But now the where we have more flexibility is on our timing on the fields, and every farm is a little different. So and what I mean by that is, how large of a farm is it? How much available food source do we have? What can we flood up super early? So if I had a big enough tract, I'm gonna start putting water on. In our neighborhood, I'm gonna start putting water on. I would have some units that have water on them probably by the end of October. Now they're not going to be a lot. It's not going to be massive acres, so I don't want ducks just pounding and getting in there. But I also want to attract some of those early migrators that are coming down. I call them Halloween ducks. But if you've only got 40 acres, maybe you stage that flooding a little bit later, so you don't capture. And two, Brian, it's critical. Like I talked about, looking at the neighborhood, what's going on around you? Does the neighbor have a, I don't know, 400-acre reservoir that is holding a bunch of birds? Well, don't throw water on your food source, your 20-acre, 30-acre, 40-acre food plot a month early. Flood that thing up a week or 10 days, 14 days, whatever, before season gets in. And ideally, when you're talking about staging water, I don't want to typically, I try not to take a pool or a unit to 100% flood capacity right out of the gate. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So I
Mm-hmm.
can stage and stagger the water, or, pump it to a certain level. You've got, more boards in your blast board riser than you do water. Does that make you follow me? And
Yeah.
so now let's let Mother Nature rain, runoff. Let nature kind of take care of some of those things. And if you need to go push the pump on again to put a few more, 4 inches, another foot in to push it up onto some fresh food.
So
You
do
have the
you do you do you
availability.
put water? Do you put water on all of? I mean, and I know you may have, let's just say, 40 acres, but you're talking about you may not put water on all 40 of it. But I mean, do you
Correct.
put water on all of your properties to begin the season, or do you wait till second half of the season before you put any water on certain properties, or do you kind of try to
Yeah,
stagger it like that?
yeah. So again, Brian, it all depends. And do I own 40 acres and that's or is that farm 320 acres, and how is it broken up? So what are my options? But yes, so in an ideal world, let's say that we have, you know, 320 acres broken up into equal 80-acre units that are all squares that are all sit right beside each other. Okay, that are all, it's one big contiguous square with 80-acre, 480-acre parcels, and each unit is independently controllable. Then I may flood units A and B to 50% capacity, unit C to 75, and leave unit B completely dry. You see what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah.
kind of just reverse engineer things throughout the season, or let the ebb and the flow of the season dictate. If rainwater puts water in those units, or to get them closer to 100%. But I would never want to start off with that hypothetical 320-acre block of land. I wouldn't want to start it at 100% flooding capacity November the 15th, before season comes in.
And I don't think that people realize, and maybe myself as well, because I'm not a farmer and I don't do this. But how common is it for ducks to go through a food source? I mean, I know it's going to depend on the size of it. I mean, a 40-acre field that ducks are pounding are going to get demolished a lot quicker than 300 acres. But I mean,
No.
if do you think that's somebody with the common eye like Garrett and I? We see that there are ducks around at certain parts of the season and then they're not. Could that be one of the problems, that the food source is getting eat up and that's why they're moving on?
100%. And Brian, I've watched ducks. So a good case study on that. Just a field observation, right? But one year we bought, I don't remember what it was, 15 acres or so of commercial. It was commercial grade planted rice that the farmer had planted. We just said, hey, leave that 15 acres right here in this area along the wood lines we were standing. It was probably, oh, I don't know, 180 bushel rice, let's call it. So it was a good productive commercial crop. That's typically not many folks are planting waterfowl food plots and getting 180 bushel type of production out of a food plot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I watched, and I couldn't tell you how many ducks there were. It's tough for me to tell. Are there 5,000 out there, 7,500, or there 25,000? It's kind of tough to
Yeah.
tell. But um, they got started. The ducks got started on that standing rice, and you could literally watch them. And within a week, they had mowed through 15 acres. I'm talking, and you could watch the progression of the rice. So day one, you show up and they just showed up at the field. Now they're in the rice, and they started on the south end of what we left, and they just marched their way north. And the next day, you'd come back, and 300 yards would look like where they were standing rice the night the day before would be a mud flat. And then the next day you'd show up, and another 300 yards would be a mud flat. I mean, it was crazy. It looked like you took a spike roller and just rolled the rice down. They marched through it in like that. It was so
So
quick.
speaking
So,
of ducks in a rice field, I've kind of got a off the wall question for you. Uh, do you think that hunting in a rice field, if you put decoys out somewhere and ducks have been using that field, if you're not where the food source, if they've eaten that part of the field up, do you think the ducks are attracted more to your decoys, or when they come in and you're like, man, I just can't get them to come, I can't get them within shooting distance today, or you got a pit right out in the middle and everything's mowed down around it, and you just can't get them over there. They're landing on your east side of the field or whatever where you've got rice. I mean, are those ducks looking more for that food source or being attracted more to those decoys?
Brian, that's kind of tough to say, but
I mean, I know we'd have to ask a duck to really get the
yeah,
the
right,
full,
right.
but I
I
mean,
mean,
just
if,
from what you
if you
see, I
if you
mean,
ask me if you ask me for my opinion, I mean, food's gonna be the driver. I think that they're. I mean, it was obvious from my perspective as a non-duck where the food source was left in that rice field and where it wasn't, and I did not see the ducks. Like every duck that came into that field didn't double back and go to the area that they had eaten out. They went to now they might land right on the south end of the rice where they quit eating the day before and swim into the rice.
yeah.
But they're keyed in on, I mean, that's what they were coming, at least during that point in time, that's what they were coming there for.
But I
And
mean,
it's
that's kind of
literally,
something
it's
to keep in mind,
a
I mean,
hundred, oh,
when you're
a
hunting a
hundred
rice
percent.
field and you got a blind in the middle of it, and maybe the food source around that blind has been eaten up, and you're going out and you're hunting that blind all the time, and you're wondering why you can't get those ducks to come into your spread. I mean, if those ducks have been there and they know where the food source is, they ain't messing with your decoys. I mean, they know where they're going. I mean,
Right.
that's just kind of something. I mean, Garrett and I hunted a couple rice fields quite a bit last year, and it never crossed my mind one time when ducks were coming in and landing way away from us. They weren't acting like they were spooked off of us or the
Right.
blind or decoy shy or anything. But man, when they came to that field, they knew where they were going. And now that we started talking about this a little bit more about the rice and stuff, just kind of made me think. I mean, I wonder if those ducks knew exactly where they were going because of the food source instead of worrying about the decoys.
Yeah. I mean, if they were coming there on a feed mission, yeah, absolutely. They know where it would have done. That's the situation that I was talking about with the standing rice that we had left in the field. If I would have went and set my decoys up 100 yards south of where the standing rice was that they were coming back, I might have got a couple pass stops in on, you know, I'm sure that there would be a duck dumb enough to maybe come over there and inspect, but no,
Some spoonies and teal would have given you some
You
shot.
talked them
there
into
was
it.
There would have been a crayon eater in the bunch that would have probably come in and gave us a look. But besides those one or two, yeah, the majority of them are keyed in on food. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
I got another question.
What you got?
I got
fire
another
away.
question. All right. So you get a new property. All right. Let's just say you get a stand of 40 acre stand of timber. So I guess I've heard a school of thought that says you shouldn't hunt that property. Just say if it's never been hunted, you should start hunting that property year one. You should allow ducks to get in there year one, allow them to imprint, and then maybe year three. Do you have any rules as to, I need to let this sit a while before I start hunting it? Or you just year one, they're in there, let's go.
Depends on how many ducks are in there.
Well, bingo. No, and you're exactly right. I mean, look, but here's the thing. I
I didn't
mean, if
ask you,
you
Brian.
but Brian's right. If you're
I
one,
already know his opinion.
if if you're in one of those, let's just call it a 40-acre impounded woodblock, just to use this as our case study. If you know, you build that woodblock out in the first year, you put the water to it, it's got, I don't know, it's just loaded from levee to levee with ducks in there. Well, I mean, what more imprinting? And now I would, but here's the key: it's how you hunt them. This is critical to me as anything else. How do you access the property? Are you disturbing that entire 40-acre woodblock when you come and go, or can you get in and out quickly with very, very minimal disturbance? Um, so I think that there's a lot of things in play there. But it, I know, Garrett, back to your question on what I've seen work. And what I've seen work, what I truly believe, is that you can train a duck. You can train waterfowl just like anything else. They understand where they're safe, they understand where they're not. And so, yes, if you take a marginal piece of property that may have a few birds on it the first year and you put the inputs and you develop that piece of property to in the correct way, you're going to be better off, in my opinion, this is just from what I've seen. 5 years down the road, if you lay off of them for a minute on the front end and let them build the confidence, let them get in there, leave them alone, let them start coming back to that thing a couple of years in a row, and because it snowballs. It's like compounding interest. I mean, the ducks bring more ducks, bring more ducks. I mean, it's just I've seen it work in that capacity too often. So
So,
And
so
I
every piece
don't.
of property is a puzzle you have to put together. You
a
have to put
hundred
the
percent.
pieces of the puzzle together.
Yep.
Now, we talked about what makes a property successful. Is there any properties that you've attempted to develop and you're just like, it's not going to get there? I give up. And why did it fail?
No, but
You do your
I
homework
mean,
good enough that you know it's
yeah,
going to work
I
out.
mean, here's the thing. In the area that I personally like, if you're talking about just for me specifically, in the area that I'm focused and operating in, I've been up and down these roads. I've been up and down this just through the area, for since I was 16 years old. I mean, before that I wasn't driving, but when I turned 16, 17 years old and could hit the county roads and Woodruff County driving and looking, I mean, that's what I did. So I
You know the
haven't.
area.
Yes, and now if I went into Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Louisiana, honestly, if I went to south of I-40 and started looking, I would have to do. I wouldn't feel as confident simply from the standpoint of not making it because I don't understand how that area ebbs and flows, and I think I would be okay south of 40, but because Arkansas, a lot of it functions relatively the same, but I would still it wouldn't I wouldn't have the I think I would be more likely to not understand completely, maybe early on anyway when we were buying. If I was doing it in an area where we weren't, I had to spend
It's like a
a
real
majority
estate
of
agent knowing their neighborhood and
yeah,
their market.
bingo, yes, yep.
Well, and back to what Garrett was talking about, kind of on the imprinting. I can understand if you develop this brand new property and you're getting a few ducks. You don't want to go out there and the you're getting 15 ducks to show up to the place every day, and you go
Yeah,
out there and just go to work on them and kill three of them, and then you shoot them off. I can understand that, but
and look,
speaking of
Brian,
imprinting,
let me pause you right there for a second. even if you're driving out there in your ATV to go scout to see if your field has any ducks and you jump those 15 birds and you flush them
Yeah.
off the field, it's no different than you and
I've been
getting
trying to
whatever.
tell Garrett that for years. He sends his dad and his uncle to scout this place
I
over
don't
in
send them to
Falcon,
scout it. They go feed cows out there,
and
and
they go out there to
there's
scout
no
for
stopping it.
ducks. They're like, "Hey, ran up 40 out of there today. There's some ducks in that hole." Yeah,
Well, there's not
they ain't coming
anymore.
back.
Yeah.
I've about
But
come to
you
the
know,
conclusion. I've about come to the conclusion that ducks don't even like being looked at. I mean, it's just they want to be they need seclusion. I mean, they need they need to be left alone. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Brad.
no. I was just I mean, but like you said, if you've got a brand new property, and I mean those ducks are just wearing it out. I mean, I'm all for imprinting. I'm going to try to go to the plug and imprint as many of those as I can with still shot. I mean, I want them to go back and tell somebody that I'm there. But it just depends on. But I get what Garrett's saying. You got to kind of
Here,
build those numbers up and get that imprint in. But it'd be hard if you got a brand new property and all of a sudden you hit a home run. I mean, there's just full.
well, but here's if you buy a brand new property and it's loaded up year one, uh, whether it was by design or by luck, you picked up. I mean, you just picked up they were coming to go. I mean, I don't think that you can take. Let's just say, in theory, you go down to wherever we're at. You pick your county in Arkansas. You go by a farm in Mississippi or Louisiana or wherever else. But even if it's in that eastern third that we're talking about of the state, and you just go build a box around it and you pump it full of water year one, and ducks haven't used it ever, even if it'll hold the water because of soil type and even all of everything checks out. Odds are year three, four, five are going to be much better than year one and two. If I'm just being honest, from what I've seen,
Do
when
you,
you go from a super raw piece to something developed, and if you can forego the pressure on the front end, and man, I just think you're going to make up for it on the back end.
do you think that's where a lot of people go wrong? Is not being patient and giving it the time to build a place. To give the ducks time, to give them time to really create a good place and let the ducks get in there. I mean, because there's every day somebody's buying a piece of property and they
Yeah,
don't kill ducks
and
on it for a year or two and they turn around and sell it. I mean,
yeah,
you think that's a problem when people just really aren't giving it enough time and effort and saying, hey, you know, I'm looking 5 years down the road. I'm not looking for next
right,
year.
right. Yeah, yeah, probably so, Brian. I mean, I would say yes. Um, I think that for a lot of folks, that I go buy a piece of property. So I bought my 40 acres, I bought my 80, I bought my farm, whatever that is, right? And you spent your money, so why do I bought it to hunt?
Yeah.
And so it's but I would just caution on being think about this as a long game and not a short game. Is what would tell
Well,
those
and if you
folks.
bought it for a price that you're not putting yourself in a bind, I mean, it's so expensive nowadays. I mean, you're
Mhm.
spending an arm and a leg to get it. You don't really want to sit on your hands for 5 years. At least a lot of people are thinking that.
You're
Um,
right. You're right. And every piece of property, I believe, has its nuances. So, is there a portion that we can slip into and utilize year one when we're not disturbing all of the farm? We're just disturbing this little, corner of the farm or something to where we're still getting utilization, but we're still building that long-term foundation for ducks to consider this their safe place for at least, a number of days a year.
So the thing
And
you keep going back to is don't pressure them. And that's something, I mean, we've seen that where we hunt and been in a couple of different clubs and stuff. There's not anywhere that you can go in, no matter how good the place is. It's got everything there. It's got timber, it's got sloughs,
Mhm.
it's got fields and food and all the things. Um, we were in a club several years ago, and they hunt the timber
don't mention the
every
name.
day of the week for 60 days, the same holes, and you just can't do that. And maybe there was a time in the past where maybe that worked. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I know it doesn't work now. And so just not pressure. I mean,
If it
decrease
did
in
work, it's been a
pressure.
long, long time ago. If it did
Right,
work.
right. And it's pressure like you were talking about, whether it's running mud motors or if it's running your ATV around fields or any way that you put pressure on them is negatively impacting them.
Uh-oh. Think
Can y'all
we
hear
got a
me?
little, there we go. We got you back now.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I hear you.
We got some technical difficulties going on. Can you hear us, Dustin?
It's on my end.
Look, we're going to take a short break real quick, Cam, and when we come back, we're
Just
going to
a
see if
second.
we can get these
I'm sorry.
technical difficulties worked out. We'll be right back. All right, we are back here on the blind, and we are. Are you there with us?
Can you guys hear me at all?
We
Oh
hear
man,
you.
perfect, loud and clear.
I got nothing. I have no idea what just happened here.
Can you hear us?
Hang on just a second, guys. Give me just a second.
All right, we're gonna let him get his.
I got you.
Okay,
Loud and clear.
we can
Hey
hear you.
yo, I'm back.
We can hear you loud and clear. Good, good, good. So we took a little commercial break there, and we got our man back here. And so, look, let's talk a little duck hunting. Let's talk a little duck hunting. So, I know that you work all year round on trying to build these properties up with the goal of, so I don't know if you hunt all of them. Do you hunt all of your properties, or some of them just for rest and food?
Well, no, I mean we'll hunt. We may not hunt every acre of every property, but
Right.
we'll hunt every property in some capacity. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, uh, you said you had some timber, some woods, and you had some fields. So, just talk to us a little bit about that. What? I mean, I'm sure I know your answer already, but we may not. I mean, what's your favorite kind of terrain to hunt? And you still there with us? He lost us. All right, we got some technical difficulties going on here again. We're gonna see if we could get them
Now,
fixed.
now I got you again now.
All right, all right, all right. Did you hear anything that I said? Say that one more time.
It starts to break up as you start.
I
Garrett,
don't know
can you
what's
hear
going
me?
on. I hear you. Everything's
Okay.
loud and clear on my end.
I have no clue. That's the good thing about technology is we never know what's going on. But uh, by the look on his face, I don't think he can hear us.
I can hear you
Okay.
until you start asking questions.
We catch about every second word you say.
All right. Well, look. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna finish this show. I'm gonna call Dustin on his phone right now, and we're gonna finish this out on the phone. I'm gonna put him on speakerphone. Let's see if we can make this work.
What are we doing here?
All right. I tell you what. Just click off your computer there. Yeah, just go ahead and exit off of there. All right. Yep. Leave it right there. Leave it right there. Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
he's
All
gone.
right.
Okay.
Cam, you do what you need to do with us, or we'll leave it like it is right there. All right. Can you hear him, Garrett? Say something, Dustin.
Garrett, can you hear me?
I hear him loud and clear. That's awesome.
Okay.
Garrett?
All right. Yep. He can hear you. So you can't hear Garrett. All you can hear is me. So I guess I'm just going to have to talk the rest of the time. But
You're good at that anyway, so it'll be all right.
yeah. So look, let's talk a little bit briefly since we had some technical difficulties. Let's talk about your hunting. You got some timber and you got some fields. Let's. What's your favorite to hunt, and I guess kind of what makes each one of them special to you?
Brian, honestly, my favorite to hunt, if I'm a Cache River guy, so I like to hunt the River Channel. That's just what I grew up doing. That's what that's what's near and dear to my heart. Now, I'm going to pick woods typically over field, because there's nothing to me like standing next to a tree and whether it's one duck or 100 ducks, every single duck is cool watching them come through the branches. But the funny thing is, Brian, once we got into picking up some of these farms and buying some of this ground, I've actually started to develop a real affinity for field hunting. I mean, you know, it, it gives you a different dynamic. I did some layout blind stuff last year for the first time, and I know to some folks watching or listening that may sound crazy for the first time, but I really had never experienced it before, and it was one of the coolest. I probably remember that hunt more vividly than I remember the best timber hunt from last year. I mean, it was just a really neat experience. So, I like the timber, I like the woods, I like the getting them through the trees, whether it be a cypress tupelo break or a block of hardwoods. But
We just didn't
I'm,
know
I,
if you were a purist. I've got
no,
some. I know you
I
know some guys, and I know some guys too, and they will not hunt anything but the woods. And I'm just like, look, I just like to hunt ducks. I'll hunt them in
yeah,
a field. I'll hunt them in a ditch. I'll hunt them on a lake. I'll hunt them out of Garrett's pool down the street if he'll put decoys in there and get ducks to come into it. I don't care
that's
where
right.
they are. I just want to hunt ducks.
That's right.
So, do you
Yep.
get many geese up there on your fields?
Mm. Did you say do we get many or do we
Yeah.
shoot many?
Well, either one.
I'm not a goose hunter. I've probably owned somewhere in the neighborhood of a dozen spec decoys, and those are floaters just because I thought it might be something nice to put out as a confidence builder in our
Yeah.
duck
Yeah.
decoy spreads. But I've never even put a goose call to my mouth. So to answer your question, no, we don't kill many geese. However,
That old
this
stray speckle belly that comes through and he's close enough to shoot.
Well, that, and then this year, we had a situation to where one of our fields, I don't know, we had there was 160 acres or so of you call it 200 acres of field, and that we use for kind of a sanctuary or rest area and food plot. We'll hunt the field sparingly some on just very 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 specific situations, but. I had a buddy of mine call me that lived up near this farm or had a place up there near the farm. He said, "Hey, you're about to have a real problem." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "If you don't get up here and take care of these geese, you probably have 50,000 geese sitting on you right now, and they're about to eat you out of house and home."
Mm.
So the next morning we loaded up, and now this young guy happens to be a goose guide. It's Kent Madden with Two Flyways Outfitters.
Yeah. Yeah.
His goose calling and his goose hunting is a great duck hunter, but he went out there the next morning and set up the spread, and we took care of the goose problem. And I had a new outlook on goose hunting. It was really cool.
Awesome. Well, look,
Yep.
since we've had some technical difficulties and stuff, and I know we've had you on here for an hour, I got a few last final questions for you, just to kind of get a few things out there. And Garrett's raising his hand. I know you can't hear him, but he can tell me, and I'll ask you if he's got something. But what is Dustin Roddy's perfect day look like? If you got to pick a perfect day out there to duck hunt, I mean, where are you hunting? What's the day look like? What are you shooting in your bag limit that day? What's your perfect day?
For me, Brian, my perfect day would be either pre or post front. Okay, and by front I'm talking a drastic weather change
Yeah.
in temperature. So either we hard north winds spun us into a freeze up situation, or the wind turns around out of the south right after, and you got those few days of warm up, and ducks start coming back the other way. But anyway, ducks are on the move. My perfect day is going to be to sit on the river channel somewhere and and hunt, traffic birds. That's what I love to do. Bag, if there's 4 of us, sure, 16 mallards, but I'm also not opposed to shooting a pintail either, or a teal or anything else. Now I'm going to probably wait out and try to not let non-mallards dip into the mallard bag if I think that mallards are going to be working. Just because, man, mallards are just you know how it is.
Yeah.
You can work them.
Yeah.
They respond.
Yeah.
Pintails, I mean, crap, half the time I go out and watch a pintail circle a field, it'll have 10,000 live ducks in it, and pintail sits there and circles for 20 minutes before it lands.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, well, I have no shot at these birds, but yeah, that would be it, man. Bright sunshine, high sky. I want to, when I get out of bed that morning and walk outside, I want to see the stars, and I want to have a good stout, 15-mile-an-hour sustained wind from a one direction. So that's my perfect day.
That sounds pretty good to me. Garrett, you got anything for Dustin before we let him go?
I can't barely hear you.
Do you have anything for Dustin before we let him go?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, Dustin, I think we're having some technical difficulties all around. Garrett can barely hear me, and so we're going to let you go, buddy, man. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. At least we got through all of our land management and development. We really enjoyed listening to all that, and I'd love to have you back on. And, hey, we are going to come over to the co-op sometime soon. Talked with Jeremiah today and told him I'd love to have you over when we do. So I'd love to get you on the show in person next time, and we can talk some more about some of this stuff.
Absolutely, man. I actually talked to Jeremiah and the co-op guys today, and they told me that about that, and I told them to make sure to tell you that I would be there. So we will see you soon.
Awesome, man. And so what all social media are you on? If people want to go follow you, where can they follow you at?
Well, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok are the main 3 platforms. I will say that right now my personal Facebook account has been hacked, which is kind of preventing me to have access at all into that. But so bear with me for a minute. But yeah, those 3 are the main ones that we spend put most of our information on.
Well, man, we appreciate you for being on with us, and I will talk to you soon, and we'll make sure we got all these technical difficulties worked out before we see you next time.
Man, I really enjoyed it.
All right, man. Appreciate you, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Yes, bye-bye.
All right, so that was Dustin Roddy from Cache River Farms, and if you were wondering why he's not there in the middle with us, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, we ran into some technical difficulties about minute 50, so we've been about 10 minutes here or so having him via telephone, so we got him out of the middle of the screen, and we're talking to him just to finish up with him on the telephone. But, man, we appreciate him. Go follow them at Cache River Farms on social media. Man, they put out some good content, and, man, Dustin's all about trying to make some good land and food source for the ducks. And so, Garrett, you got anything else before we go, buddy?
I don't have anything else. I enjoyed that. I feel like I learned some things, got some questions answered that I've been wondering about, and hopefully our listeners got something out of it as well before the technical difficulties.
Yeah. So, again, before we get off of here, we appreciate all of our sponsors here on Season 2 of The Blind: Shin Gear, Lyle Real Estate, Apex Ammunition, Alpha Innovations, Stratton Seed Company, Perfect Limit Outdoors, Dirty Duck Coffee, and Hella Dry Utility Poles. We appreciate all those guys and gals for making this possible. And go follow us on Instagram, here on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. We've got TikTok. But we really, really need your help growing our podcast. So if you are watching this on Facebook or YouTube, go over to our new podcast sites on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Go hit the little bell so you're subscribed, so it'll notify you anytime we put out a new episode. Listen to an episode or all of them that are on there, and then give us a 5-star rating, because that helps us when people go on there to look for podcasts. It helps to boost us on up the list. But go and listen to this episode and all of our other ones when you're driving to work in the mornings, or driving home in the evenings, or maybe you're going on a family vacation and you and all your kids can sit and listen to some duck hunting stuff on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But we appreciate you for tuning in. A little bit about what's coming down the line. Next week, we will have an episode. It will not be live. It was pre-recorded a couple weeks ago, but we have got an episode next week coming for you. One of us will be gone duck hunting next week, and Garrett's going to have to stay at home, but for good reason. Me and a couple other guys are going to head up north. We're going to go up into Canada and shoot some ducks and some geese, so we'll be sharing some of that on our social media with you as well. But we do have an episode coming out next week, so be looking for that, and I think it'll be one that you'll really enjoy. If you enjoy duck calling or duck calls, I think you'll really enjoy that one. So tune in next week. I think it'll drop probably on Thursday of next week if Cam decides to do that. He's the man in charge, so be looking for it next week. Another episode of The Blind. Once again, we appreciate you for tuning in, no matter where you're tuning in at. And if you are listening on the podcast, make sure you subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate you for tuning in on this episode of The Blind. Garrett, you got anything before we get off here, buddy?
Good to go.
All right, we'll see you next week right here on The Blind. Cam, we gone.